regular meeting to order. It's December 12th at 6 o'clock. We're in the Town Council chambers. Danielle, could I have roll call, please?
Ken Demers.
Here.
Robert DeCina.
Here.
Gary Lafferty.
Here.
Robert Ritalik.
He was coming.
Rachel Ryan. Here.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes from September 12th. Could I have a motion?
I move we approve the minutes from September 12th.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion, any changes, any? No? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Nobody's here for public participation. Mark, would you like to?
Through the chair.
No?
Through the chair.
Sure.
From the public. I could do that from the public, or no?
Could
I
Herm?
think that was done in other meetings.
Could
Yeah,
Herm?
we've done that
Could I do
before.
that?
Yeah.
From the public.
Could Herm get up for public participation?
Yeah.
May I do it from here?
Sure.
Robert DeCina, 80 Parkman Street in Oakville. I'd like to commend the turnout and the professional job that was done during the storm, be it not as inclement as it was to be, but the crews were out there and the roads were very good, because I got called in to my part-time job this morning, and I had to drive into work at 7 o'clock in my own car, and I drove around town with a town vehicle the rest of the day, and the roads were very, very good. We thank you.
All right, awesome. That's it. All right. I don't see any correspondence here. We'll move on to old business.
Thanks for having me here tonight. The team's going to help me out with some of these projects that we have at hand. And I know a lot of that, the great job over the past 36 hours goes to the Highway Department and Bob and the rest of his team that supports us here as the town. So on the update for Hungerford and Turner, I'm going to turn it over to Joe.
Joe Millette, Assistant Town Engineer. On Hungerford, we're about 1/6 of the way complete with the drainage area. For the end of the year, we did completely overlay the horrible section of that road. The existing catch basins that we got in, the 5, we did put wings on to protect them. Okay? So at this point, at least the residents are somewhat satisfied. We're at least did what we told them we were going to do for this time. Turner Avenue, Lilac, Happy, Emily, Bisbee, and Skipper Avenue. They're complete paved, curbed, backfilled, driveways are all done. Nice. At this point, as far as we know, we have no other complaints. We had a couple people that wanted a few things taken care of. They were addressed and handled. We also took care of Cedar Ridge, where it had rippled from the flood back in September. Okay. And at this point, that covers these areas. Any questions?
Any questions from the?
You said Cedar Ridge, you said?
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't aware there was a problem. But,
Yeah, it had rippled and it was getting worse. The whole edge of the road, by the beginning of it, right by
Near
Sylvan Lake,
yeah.
it was
Okay.
all rippled and it was just
All right.
getting to be undrivable.
Anybody else?
Through the chair again.
Sure.
After the meeting, what we had, I believe was the last meeting we had when the people were there out in force from Hungerford Avenue,
Yes.
and the suggestion was made to put the signs up at either end to do some of the roadway. It's fantastic. People are not driving in at either end. It's virtually no through traffic except for people that live there.
Correct. And we had some residents still complain that it wasn't, we'll just say, enough signage, because they would come in from one side and couldn't get through. But they were on both ends, and they knew if they left that morning where we were working, so it should have been fine. But we dealt with it, and Highway did a super job at taking care of it.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is Echo Lake, and it's back to Joe.
Okay, Echo Lake drainage is now complete also, including the patch paving, the curbing. And at this point, we had to mill out around a manhole and repave to make sure that the plows didn't hit it. Other than that, it's good. And now I know, Jerry, that you wanted me to talk about the overages. Is that now or you want me to wait?
I think that's going to come further on.
Okay, so at that point, we're good on that project at this time.
Great.
I had a question on that one, if you
Okay?
Sure.
mind. When the contractor was doing that section of Echo Lake Road, they said they came across another 30-inch pipe that was rotted out worse than the ones that they replaced, but they said they couldn't do anything about it because it wasn't in the contract or whatever, so I'm just wondering if they're going to have to dig the road back up a year from now or something.
Okay, I'm not aware of any additional 30-inch that they came across, because we tied into the existing.
Yep.
And that was RCP where we tied into.
All right, because one of the workers told me it was like right alongside of the pipe that they replaced or
It
whatever.
might be an old one that was in there from previous years, but already dead.
Was it abandoned?
Yeah.
Okay. That's it.
You're welcome.
Anything else?
Okay, the next item up is Turkey Brook, and I'm going to have Paul cover that one.
Yes, Paul Benevich, Town Engineer. Don't really have much to report on Turkey Brook since Ordinary Joe's addressed that pipe that they put in off a ball farm. It's, flooding's virtually, gone away. And down on Turkey Brook itself, I know, Bob, you just finished a section from the senior center up to Sylvan Lake, right? The cleaning? Yes. You didn't do the from Falls down to Sunnyside. That's still to be done? Correct. Okay. So that's helped, I think, the flow on the brook quite a bit, so, and the rest still to be done, as I said, from Falls down to Sunnyside will be done in the spring, hopefully, after snow season, so. That's pretty much it. Everything else is still status quo down there, so. That's all I have.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions for Paul?
No.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment on that?
Sure.
Mark Rainbow, Town Manager. Just to make you aware that I have had some correspondence, and I think it was from today, I didn't speak with Public Works Director regarding some of the people on the lower end by Bisbee, in which their property is deteriorating from the flow of the water in there. I have spoke with Joe Millette, we are addressing it, but the families that are complaining on there have contacted me again, and I do need to get back to them. So I will be touching base with the Public Works Director over that matter, but just so you're aware, in case they do reach out further, we are aware of it, and we will address it as best we can. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks.
The next, are there any questions?
So,
The next item is the Crestbrook Park walkway. I would like Bob to come up and talk about the work that was done.
couldn't believe how they did up there.
Bob Grand Prix, Highway Superintendent. Right now, Crestbrook Park walkway, the walkway itself is completed. It's got milling surface, which is used pavement, basically, ground-up used pavement. We use that for the surface. Everything's been seeded. All of the light post bases are in place using sonotube and concrete. I believe Tony Iosa from the building department is going to construct the light poles out of the used light poles from the police department that we saved years ago. So we're kind of recycling the light poles. We're going to use the poles themselves, but we're going to use solar-powered lighting. So in the spring, hopefully all the grass will grow and everything will look nice and everything will be functional.
I'd like to just add a few things to that. In the spring also, we're going to fine grade the rest of the walkway. Right now, it's about 4% all the way through, but we do have to make a couple level spots so that people in wheelchairs can have a resting area. Second thing, the lights, the solar lights are in at the Crestbrook Golf Maintenance Garage. So that as Bob said, Tony Iosa is going to take those lights, modify them, and we'll mount them on there. These lights will operate at 30% during the night unless someone walks by or an animal, and then they'll go to 100%. Okay? And then, of course, we'll finish any modification as far as reseeding. There's some, we'll say, ornamental grasses that we want to plant around, and a couple ornamental trees in that area to beautify the section. Anyone have any other questions on Crestbrook right now? Okay, thank you.
The next item I'm going to cover on the pavement management analysis by Beta. First, I would like to thank the town for actually putting this program into place to kind of show where we have to go over the next 5 to 10 years with this study. And you'll have to forgive me, I should have made copies and put them as part of the agenda here. But I do have a couple of PowerPoint slides that I'll go through. Next one. So that's just the summary, 144 miles of road, $5 million in bonding, $1.5 million from ARPA. In the vote for the fourth referendum that this was, it was the highest one. It was at 71% in favor. The current RSR, which is like a grade school rating, is a 61. And the state average is 72. And the RSR was done by LiDAR. So it was a light radar done by Beta. So it really gives you an accurate condition for the road. One of the assumptions and goals that I'm coming up with as the director was that 72 should be our number. But the higher we go, the higher the cost is going to be. Maybe we don't want 72. Maybe we want 70. Maybe we want 68. Once I show you some of those numbers, you'll see the reason why. And the other part is I'm looking at more of a turnkey for the projects. So highways could work on more maintenance and less construction, which is another topic that I have under new business. Next slide. So for the funding that we received, the $5 million in the 1.5, I came out with 50% for full depth reconstruction, 28% for mill and overlay, 20% for chipstone or chip seal, and 2% for crack seal. So the top two numbers add up to 5.07 million, and the bottom two add up to that 1.43, or basically 5 million and 1.5 million. And you can see the funding source that I have on the right-hand side, bonding, ARPA for that. The overall Beta report has $28 million in there for full depth reconstruction. Once again, the Beta report for mill and overlay has 12 million. And for chipstone, it has 4.7. So you can see we're this touching the four categories. And I have some other slides that I'll get into this, is we don't want to wait for everything to go to full depth reconstruction because of the cost. So we want to grab it from these four specific areas because it's more cost effective for us in the long run. Next slide. These are some questions I asked Beta. We actually have the answers, and they're in the next slide. So for the current RSR, once we fix, if we wanted an A+ score for our roads, it would cost us $45 million right now. Okay, we know that's not the answer. We can't afford an A+. So that's where I came up with is our target should be the state average of the municipalities that do the RSR rating is 72. Once again, I summarized the two funding sources. Then once we spend that money, 6.5 million, it'll bring our RSR up to 65. So if we wanted to attain a 72 in 5 years, it's going to be 5.5 million per year, or 27.5 million. If we wanted to obtain it in 10 years, it would be cheaper, 3.8 million per single year, but more expensive because we spread it out over 10 years. So each year that we go into this program, those numbers will get finer and more detailed. So this is part of the question is, do we want state average? Do we want a 70? Do we want a 68? Do we want a 74? But for me, I think our target goal, my recommendation is we go to 72. And get through this next year or two with the bonding and the ARPA money. And we could update the beta report. We have the systems in place they've trained us. So once we start doing roads, we could update the system and see where our RSR is. Next slide. So the summary they came back is that they could do 20% of the roads with that $6.5 million. It's 27.55 miles, and the RSR, once again, goes from 61 to 65. So it looks like a lot of miles, but 9 miles of it is crack seal, which is really nothing. You're just sealing cracks in the road. It helps you out in the long term. It helps you for 2 to 3 to 4 years for your RSR rating. The next biggest one is chipstone. It's going to give us 8 miles of chipstone, 6 miles of mill and pave, and 4 miles of full depth reconstruction. So you can see 50% of the money's going to the bottom line number, and that's the full depth reconstruction. But it's only giving us the 4 miles. Our biggest bang to try to solve it for the future is chipstone, because it gives us another 4 to 7 years worth of life. So we want to hit all 4 of these at the same time. Next slide. Not to get, I just pulled a few of these up here, and it's just basically the higher you are up in the curve, the cheaper it is to do some maintenance, to do some repair, as opposed to when it's already down, below the 60 that we're at, it's costing us a lot more money for it. I have another slide that kind of equates to it too. Next one. Here's the 4 different, the routine, preventative, minor, major rehabs. So 50% of our money is going in the red because the roads are already failing, but we want to hit it when it's like in the green and when it's in the brown, because it gets about 10 times more costly the further you go down that graph. And I think I have one more slide after this just to kind of give it some basis. So you can see that top thing with like the sawtooth that's at the top. That's the preservation that we want to do. We want to spend, less money, and we're just going to, that's like, for example, chipstone or crack seal at that part of the graph before it drops down further when we have to pay, 6 to 10 times the amount for the rehab of the roads. So if we put 100% in the road, the full depth reconstruction, it's not worth it, because more and more roads are going to fall into that category as we're moving over that 5 to 10 year span. So that's just some examples, I just wanted to show you for the beta study. And there's one more, just some questions more for my team that we have to follow up with as far as bid packages. I kind of already talked to them with chip seal, stone versus rubber. I also talked to the DOT in some other towns. Rubber is very expensive for the chip seal. And the state uses it on high traffic routes. At 188, some of their 2-digit highways and 3-digit highways. So what I'm sticking with is we want chipstone. We don't want the rubber component of it. And then how do we package some of the bids? I'd like to table, like Fairfield just came out with a bid package for chipstone. It's very economical. They're charging $3.50 per square yard for chipstone. And for us, I'm talking to Southbury to see what they were charged, because I thought we were a little bit higher than that amount, and our bid was 3 years ago. So from talking to the various boards that we have to go through, is I would like to, for example, use Fairfield for chipstone. They went out to bid. They have the numbers. And I know Middlebury piggybacked on Southbury's bid, but it's an older bid. For us, I'd like to piggyback on Fairfield, but still, talk to the experts on the team, try to shoot some holes through it, make it stronger. And therefore, we could focus on putting out the bid, the mill and pave, and the full depth reconstruction that we have. The other part that's on here is the public information, communications, is getting heavy into doing the press releases, briefing the various town committees. This one, of course, being the first one, the Highway Subcommittee. and also being up on our website, especially for the amount of miles that we're going to impact. The one thing with chipstone is you keep your speed under 15 miles an hour during the process, or you feel all the stones hitting your car or the tar. And sometimes the traveling public doesn't like to do 15 miles an hour on the road. But it saves us so much money, and it extends that life for 4 to 7 years of putting that chipstone down. The next slide I have, it's very tough. This is where I got to apologize. I have to have slides in hand. Is Beta gave us the first part of which roads. But I'm definitely bouncing it off our road foreman, Mr. Bob Grand Prix. We want to add about another 10 roads, and we're trying to see if we could do it, and which roads do we have to take off for that. So that's the details on the Beta study. So one thing I want to do is I want to make sure I get you current copies of some of the latest transactions that have happened between us and Beta. And the road list you're going to see, it's quite in detail for that 27 miles of road. But there's a lot of roads on the Lake Winnemog area of the town that are kind of not on this recommendation from Beta that I want to go after. And I think from doing this before, is you end up with the haves and the have-nots. Once you get done with the initial funding, people are going to say, how come you didn't do my road? Or you're going to say, how come you're chipstone in a perfect road? Well, it's already starting to fail. The public doesn't see it. We're just extending the life of that road so it doesn't get into that condition where you have to put a lot of money into it. Do you have any questions on the pavement study?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
like you said, you want to piggyback with Fairfield. Now, does that mean you're piggybacking with, you're going to go in the same bid process that they're in with now, or you're?
Their bid process is already done.
It's already done, yeah.
So they have their plans and not their plans, but their specifications, their statement of works.
Yep.
And they already have their proposal on how much it costs, depending on what type of chipstone you want to do. So I know we do this off of the state DAS bids, but I'd like to expand it a little bit further off of other towns' bids, and also, for example, off of federal bids, which they really don't get into like road construction. They get more into buildings and products and services.
That's all.
Anything else? All right. Just a reminder, just if you can send us, email us a
Yep.
copy of it, that'd be great. Under new business, we have maintenance versus construction.
Yeah, I just would like to open up the topic is, we do a great job, but we need to focus more on the right-of-way, the 144 miles. It's actually, 288 miles of curb line when you count both sides of the road, and the drainage that's within it. And right now, we have over 500 open work orders from the citizens for complaints. We've had a couple of great meetings of cutting through it. I only believe about half of them are true. I think the work that we've completed, we just haven't closed it out in the work order system. And our focus is to be more on maintenance, on the drainage, on the detention basins, on our vac truck that's going out, pumping out catch basins, as opposed to doing a lot of, heavy construction that we're doing in order to stay on top of things. And I think Bob will probably be the one. I don't know, Bob, if you have a few comments that you want to talk about on maintenance versus construction. So, but I think our goal is to get the citizens' work request like under 50 and then under 25 so we could stay on top of it. Because every time we pick up a bigger project, we're probably adding 25 to 50 work orders that we can't get to that are very important to the citizens because we're focusing on something bigger for the town and for the whole town, so.
One of the things that I had asked Jerry, when we put out the bid specs for future projects, if we could include a lot of the the construction end of things that we would normally do, like rebuilding catch basins and replacing drainage pipes, removing curbing. If we can include all of those things in with the bid, the construction company that wins the bid will be responsible for that type of work, instead of us working in conjunction with the construction company and both of us kind of being in each other's way. I think it would be beneficial for both the construction company and us if we could just continue with our maintenance, which is really what we're a maintenance division of Public Works. And we would cut down on a lot of the service requests that we get. We could keep up with them. There's so many out there, and we only have 21 guys to keep up with 144 miles of road. So that's just one of the ideas.
There's a lot of times you have to reset the catch basin tops like 2 or 3 times, where if it was on the contractor, he's doing the work at the same time. Sure. We're kind of, we guess, and we guess pretty good, but at times they have to reset the top of the catch basin depending on the pavement that's coming in.
On a road that's a full depth reclamation, where they go and they reclaim the whole road, they basically grind up the asphalt surface and mix it in with the sub base, and they regrade the road. One of the advantages to that is they are regrading the road and reestablishing the crown in the center of the road, which makes the center of the road higher, which gets the water to flow off to the sides and then eventually into the catch basins and into the drainage system. But until you do that, we can go through and rebuild all the catch basins before anybody starts working on the road. That's great. We have to set the tops dry. In other words, the catch basin tops. We don't mortar them down until the construction company is done reclaiming the road, regrading it, and then we see where we need to set the tops. Then we have to go back, take the tops back off and set them to the grade, the new grade of the road. So if the construction company that's actually doing the work can also do the catch basins, they could take care of everything, and we can continue on with what we have to do. Like Jerry said, the Vector complaints, we have a brand new $500,000 Vector that we weren't able to use hardly at all this year, and I really want to get that machine out there and clean out catch basins, line painting, roadside mowing, tree trimming, pothole repair, that kind of thing.
And it's not to say that we're going to go to 100% maintenance and 0% construction. We just want to fine tune it for more maintenance now. And as soon as we catch up, we're always going to be doing construction. But we just have to focus it more towards the maintenance side of things. I don't know if you have any questions on the topic?
Anybody? Questions from anybody? No? I mean, I agree with you, Jer. I think that once you get the work orders under control and you get them to that 50 or 25, then you can choose and pick your battles with the construction and always be on top of it. So historically, because I've heard a lot about road construction, it seems like we've been raising or working around the manhole or the storm drain. We've been doing those repairs for years, correct?
Correct.
Do we even ask the contractor to bid on that?
Not that I know of.
No. Yeah.
I think, Mark Grable, town manager, I think that in the past, there was an effort to save money, and the highway was asked to take on more and more responsibility for construction work to save on the project cost.
Right.
And now it's come to a point where the balance is out of balance the opposite way.
Right.
And I think that's what Public Works Director is trying to rebalance it.
Sure. I think it's a great idea to catch up on the maintenance. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If there's nothing else on maintenance versus construction, or as Mark put it, the better way of to balance it better off. Because right now, I think we're probably more than 50% in the construction.
Correct.
And we just want to switch it, probably 2/3 maintenance, 1/3 construction. If you could track that number, which is hard to track.
I had one other question. On that the vacuum truck, I was wondering, I know it's not, they said that you only have one person that's trained on that vehicle? Because I've heard they could never, there was times like when something had to be done, they couldn't use the truck because the person was on vacation or whatever.
No, we have one person that I trust the most, Ian Burtwhistle. He's also a fire truck tech.
Yeah.
He was instrumental in picking out and speccing out the Vector, that truck, because of his knowledge with water pumps and the fire truck chassis. He works for Gallons a Night, part-time, and he worked there full-time before he worked for the highway. And his knowledge, I trust his knowledge of how to spec out a truck, how to operate a truck. It's very similar to a fire truck, believe it or not. And being that it's so expensive and so detail oriented, I trust him the most to operate the truck. Everybody in the garage has been through the training, myself included. Everybody in the garage has been out with Ian. But one mistake can cost thousands of dollars. So whenever I can, Ian is the driver, and he goes out with a helper, basically.
It's the same in another town that I know where Jesse is the primary operator of the vac truck because of the cost. They always put a different number 2 guy in so they could get trained and get up to their levels. So at times you probably put other individuals in there if Ian's not available, and the same thing in Southbury with Jesse. It's just like the most expensive vehicle that we have in the public works fleet. And we're very careful when that gets employed because at times the tank could, with the suction power, it could implode with that, and or a lot of the times the lines get jammed and it takes forever to get them unjammed because of the horsepower that suction has on that line. So it's kind of common, around public works towns that you really have that one. And of course, we're always trying to train for the next one to have a backup.
Yes. Yeah, it's it.
Good. Thanks, Jer.
All right.
We've got the 23 Public Works Subcommittee meeting schedule. I think we talked about having 8 meetings, correct?
Correct. We have 8 listed. They're about halfway into the package there.
Yeah.
So basically, we do not have meetings in February, May, July, or December. But the other 8 months, we have meetings. So I wouldn't know what to do if we had a meeting every month to talk about exactly the same thing that we had the month before. So you gotta skip around a little bit.
I think we just need to accept that, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Is everybody in agreement?
Yeah.
I would hope, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, great.
You need a motion on that, or you just accept it?
I don't think we need a motion.
All right.
Make a motion, sure.
I move we accept the 2023 meeting dates.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Awesome. We already discussed. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the next item is illicit discharge and drainage connection ordinance. I'd like to turn it over to Paul.
Yes, Paul Benevich, Town Engineer. This ordinance, which will be section 26-4 in the town ordinances, illicit discharge and stormwater connections. We had a meeting, it's been some months ago, I think it's back in the spring, we talked about this as a part of the MS4 stormwater program the state DEEP mandated to us. We have to control or, illicit discharges, keep a monitoring on them, come up with enforcement and violation costs and that. I know we had much discussion. I know Herm had some ideas about the violation aspect and, who was going to enforce it and all this. It's all been, that meeting we had back in April, May. It's been incorporated into the package. It's in your package, the 5 or 7 sheets this ordinance entails. And it's all, I went back in the notes, everything that we was commented on by the committee members was in here now. And we just need a recommendation of the town council to get this going. And like I said, there's some things mandated by DEEP that we have to have in our ordinances. So that's what we're trying to do tonight.
Through the chair.
Sure.
Maybe a draft of such an ordinance should be forwarded to the town council ordinance subcommittee. which several of us sitting here are on it now, because it always comes into play, penal sanctions,
Right.
the issuance of a citation that's been brought up before. We don't have anybody, obviously, in Public Works that has such authority to do so. Would it be referred to, obviously, the police department? In which case, there would be always an issue of the violation. Would it be at the onset of the violation, or would it be a reoccurring violation, or would it be every day that the violation is in effect? The previous superintendent, we discussed that in the past, and if somebody opened the road, who opened the road? Is it the person that is working for the construction company? Is it the person who owns the construction company who may not even be there? And it would be time-consuming, obviously, to have an officer assigned to investigate such a matter. If it was spelled out right from the get-go, it's not the proper term for it, what the violation was, and would it be a violation that would have to go to court? And if there was an appeal, they'd have to wait, obviously, if somebody elected to plead not guilty, not to pay the fine, any appeal would have to be waiting until it went to court. And in the pecking order of priority of importance at the courts, be they in Waterbury, I can remember, the town manager could remember, such ordinances were low on their criteria of importance. Is there a possibility we could get a draft of that? Such an ordinance? Do they have
Well,
one in
it's in
Southbury?
your
sir?
packet.
Yeah, there's a copy in the package.
There is a copy in the
Yeah.
packet. I'm so sorry. Do you see that? The ordinance, there's a copy of that ordinance.
In here?
Yeah.
Yes.
In our packets.
Yeah, it's in there. While Herm's finding it,
I'm sorry.
just a quick, I mean, how big a problem is this?
It's not big right now, but I mean, this is, like I said, this was mandated by Connecticut Deep and, all, and there are other mandates in the MS4 program, and we still have to, do, most of them we can handle, monitoring, outfalls, stormwater, different things like that, but this is something that, like it's been, it's due, and it's something we really have to get into the ordinances, so. I remember they had that subcommittee, or what'd you call it, the review committee, that was back in the spring, and I remember I said you had a lot of questions, and these, I believe they're in here, Herm, but there is quite a lot in here if you want to, if you want to still review and get back to another meeting, it's at the committee's pleasure, so.
Through the chair again.
Sure.
I believe I just went over it again, read the draft. It is of importance. It would be time-consuming for any officer without any knowledge of such matters to investigate such a matter.
Right. Well,
I think they would have to rely on us as Public Works and
Exactly.
Engineering,
Yeah.
because we're the ones who usually find it out in the field. And, you're right, most of the times they're gonna comply, but other times they're gonna fight us, and they're gonna do what they want to do.
Probably have to come from your office through the chief's office.
Yeah.
And somebody would be designated to issue the,
And I know
Infractions.
the biggest part is what Paul mentioned, is that it's part of the MS4, which is what the state has put on the majority of the municipalities in the state, the municipal separate stormwater sewer system. It's more of just having this in file to help us with the MS4 permits with the state. But you're right, and a lot of them, I don't know which town really has teeth to go after, any of them that do a violation like
Yes.
this. So,
Yeah, item 4 says the responsibility for administration is the Public Works Department. Administer, implement, and enforce the provisions of the ordinance, so. It's in our.
yeah,
all of it's good.
for example, maybe the only enforcement power we have is we could, hold up their CO, for their building, if they tied in their, and it's something that doesn't meet the requirements, a part of it, their certificate of occupancy, for it. And there's probably other, means too, but just to help answer your question.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, through the chair. So how do you find out if somebody would be in violation of this ordinance? Like, I know I had a neighbor who had a sump pump, and it seemed like it was just coming out of their front yard and was sort of
Right.
dumping.
Yeah,
It's
that's
like
sometimes,
very
it's the
obvious.
public that we hear from first, yeah. I mean, we can't be everywhere, and like Bob said, there's 144 miles of roads,
Right,
never
that's
mind all
right.
the properties, yeah. It is, you know, the public does help in this, so.
Okay, so that's one way, is public would turn
Right.
something in, and then otherwise just, you
Or if
just
we, I mean,
notice.
I drive by all the time, I know Jerry probably will, and Bob and Joe, it's just, you see something, you know,
Yep.
what's going on here, you know, we didn't know, I don't even give a permit to put this in or do this work, you know, we see that all the time. I run across things, storm connections, all kinds of, you know, work on driveways where people, you know, supposed to get permit, they may not know about it, but yeah, we have to try to keep an eye on things, you know, so that's, comes that way too, so.
Does the water ever get to a location where it would be tested and you could determine if something was in it that wasn't supposed to be in it?
That's happened, yeah, like leachate from septic systems. I know there's a couple of things back when I first came here. Like 5, 6 years ago, we had over on Farmdale, there was an incident of what the water, you know, there's something leaking here. We weren't sure. There was an odor and, you know, had to be tested that required a septic repair there. So things like that are, you know, it's just, I don't want to say it's hit or miss, but it's, you know, there's a lot of, you know, properties in town. I don't know what the total number is, our roads and, you know, the almost 6,000, you know, catch basin storm structures we have, stormwater structures. So there's a lot we have to keep an eye on. So, but this is something, like, as I keep saying, it's mandated, so we're trying to get it done, so.
One other question. Is this connected to the issue we talked about, I think like 2 years ago, about ice forming when people like are emitting, remember that? Yes. Is that part of this ordinance, that if somebody is like releasing water from their property and it causes ice on the roads, they're responsible, or is that a separate issue?
I don't think that's not no, that one may be an illicit discharge, but it's a nuisance discharge. I don't know if that's quite correct. I'm not a legal person, but seems, I don't know, Jared, you have any thoughts on that, or?
It could, each situation depending on the site. And just some of my thoughts too, with just going back to your first question was, that still has to be reported. We do MS4 each year at the end of the year. We're starting to work on our submission for 2022. You know, like I said, on your second question, it just it depends, you know, for each one. And a lot of times the vac truck would catch them. They see something in the pipe that wasn't there before. You know, a lot of times it's roof drains. It's, you know, they're putting in French drains to help get water off their yard. And you got a 4-inch pipe that's constantly leaking. And it adds to the overall stormwater of the system, and the system can't handle it. And then that's when I don't want to say we have a good chance of them, you know, remediating it, but at least we'll bring it up to them. And some homeowners will do the right thing. So I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for. So.
Yeah. No, it's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, the only question I had, I don't know if this was like sort of like related to, remember the problem they had over on Porter Street, where the person was redoing over the parking lot, and they had water, the runoff was going supposedly directly into the river instead of having a filtration.
Yeah, I don't recall. Is this recent, Mr.
Yeah, it was
Leffler?
recently. I think, well, maybe it was more, I think it probably went, it was going through a planning and zoning meeting, I think it was, and I wasn't sure if you guys were aware.
Yeah, I don't recall this. Oh, okay.
I think you're referring to Knowlton Street?
Yeah,
Is
that area.
Yeah, that came up in our meeting last week in planning and zoning. There were a bunch of neighbors there talking about it. But I think the last few years, as much as I've known about construction, I mean, I could only see in residential where it's gotten better. I mean, it's been, for me, it feels like forever that they've made you use the infiltrators. You haven't been able to tie into a storm sewer since.
Oh, right, we've been doing that.
For
yeah.
20 years.
Right, correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still see, someone throwing a roof leader out into this, not just a street, but sidewalk down on Falls Avenue. We had one, where that's more like an icing and nuisance, what I call it nuisance.
Yeah.
If you fall on
Yeah.
ice, it's not a nuisance, because I've done it myself. But, yeah, so it's, well, it has helped a lot, the zero increase in runoff, the infiltration, the whole, which is part of the MS4 project again, too, so.
One other question, is this a time-sensitive document, or do we,
No, it's not, it's just something that, well, again, that we're mandated, it's supposed to be done, so the sooner the better. But it's
Supposed to
not,
be done
it's not
by-
that we're gonna get fined, the town's not gonna get fined.
so when is it due, Paul, do you know?
I forget, no, I should have looked, but it's either this year or,
Yeah.
it's due, so, yeah.
So we just basically need to move this to the town council for
Correct,
adoption?
yeah, it's kind of referral, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
To the council or the subcommittee?
No, you're the from your referral recommendation to the town council for final vote on the ordinance. I guess you have to have a hearing. You must have to have a hearing at that point.
Herm, did you have something you wanted to add, Herm?
Did the town attorney review this?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, this is, oh yeah, right, this is in conjunction, I'm sorry, I didn't mention it, it's in conjunction with, my notes from that past meet, you had the committee meeting and his input too, so.
I remember discussing this with Paul in the past, and through the chair again.
Sure.
And it's about the reoccurrence. If somebody is deemed to be in violation by your office, they're in violation, but for every day thereafter, they'd also be committing a violation. So
Correct.
if it was looked into for criminal prosecution, it'd have to be documented and articulated by somebody saying that on such a date it occurred. And for every day thereafter, after they were warned by all the warning, in effect, notices and so forth,
Right.
it would have to be determined by the court who to go after. Was it the person who opened the hole, the person who didn't close the hole, or would it be the owner of the construction? I'm just curious. What do you think on that one, sir?
I don't know of really any cases that were brought to criminal court on this. I think it was probably more of the civil side. MS4 is relatively new, being 5+ years. I think this is, there's a lot of record-keeping items that MS4 looks at. This is one of them that
Yes.
we would have within the system. And I don't know if anybody, I was on a MS4, I was looking at the NV cog, and they had them all taped, and I was looking at it today. And there's probably like half the towns that don't even submit an MS4 report. So we're doing the right thing. And MS4, this is only like one of the 40 things that you have to have in your MS4 report. And the other one is if somebody had illegal discharges, that has to be, put into the report. And it's always for the calendar year. So for me, I don't, and tell me if I'm wrong, I haven't heard of any financial fines of anybody discharging illegally into any of the town or municipal systems.
Mr. Chairman, may I add to this?
Sure.
This is basically, you're just going to approve this and move it forward to the subcommittee. This has already been in front of the subcommittee, and through the same line of questioning, we referred it back to be reviewed by the town attorney. So this would need to go back to the ordinance subcommittee for them to review. I don't recall off the top of my head whether we actually had a public meeting over this or a public hearing. So we're going to have to ensure that we did that, and then once the public subcommittee reviews it, they would then refer it to the town council. So this is basically just giving it back to the subcommittee for them to approve and move it forward.
Through the chair again.
Sure.
What I do like about it is that the penal sanction is $100, and that's it. That makes it an infractionable offense, governed under town ordinances in all towns. And an infractionable offense, it's not a misdemeanor, it's not a felony, it's an infraction. Somebody could be given a ticket or be fined for daily, each time that they're in violation. So I
Correct.
kind of like it that way.
And in our ordinances, we do have a portion that does address that our police department would enforce any type of infraction that would be issued. So it would be a coordinated effort if that fine were to be issued. They don't have the authority to issue infractions such as like the building inspector would be able to, or to apply for an arrest warrant.
Could we accept this now?
So to be clear, we need to approve this and then move it to the subcommittee, ordinance subcommittee.
To be honest with you, I don't know if we need to make a motion to actually send this to the subcommittee, but it wouldn't hurt to do it. If you just make that motion, we could have the subcommittee review it and then ensure that we went to public hearing, and then we can move it back to the council.
There you go.
Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Since members of us are also on the ordinance subcommittee, I myself one, I believe you are too?
No.
No. I like it myself in reviewing it. I'm sorry I wasn't prepared in reviewing it beforehand. Could we okay it now and try to get it on the agenda for the council? The council could vote on it at our next meeting, next week?
I do have to ensure that we've went to public hearing so that the community
Okay,
has
yeah,
their
we have
input.
to
I
send
don't
it to the
recall if we did that or not already. If not, we can certainly get it to move along relatively quickly.
We need to send it to the subcommittee, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. Any more discussion?
No.
Or want to make a motion?
I move that we put the illicit discharge and drainage connection ordinance towards the ordinance subcommittee for review.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Okay, the next item I'd like to do is transfers and appropriations for Stony Brook Construction, Echo Lake Drainage. I'd like to bring Joe up to discuss the project.
All right, Stony Brook Construction, they went over budget about, we'll just say round it off, 23,000. One of the things that happened is none of us caught it. They were supposed to go diagonally across the road, about 3 catch basins up. Instead, they had cut the road and went along the edge, which in the long run is better for the town. We're not doing a diagonal cut across the road. So at that point, we ended up doubling the curb we had to put in. As far as asphalt, we went over a little bit. I don't exactly remember how much. The pipe was abandoned in the center of the road, plugged and abandoned. It actually made a cleaner connection. We also went over on ledge, because they ran into some other additional ledge on that side, especially in the first area of that first catch basin, the first 100 feet out. Now, we did not have 100% inspection on that job. We do trust Stony Brook. Myself, I was stopping in the morning, in the afternoon, but we were doing some of the other things that we just didn't keep up on it. Myself, Paul, even Jody, we never noticed the saw cut went all the way up the edge of the road and did not go diagonally. So that's where most of the overages were. So we ended up with additional overages for loam and seed and topsoil. So we would like to see that it is appropriated. We noticed that we made the mistake, but we're still within the 20% contingency of the project. We're about 14.5% over right now. Does anyone have any questions on that? They want a little more explanation or answer?
Questions? Go ahead, Gary.
No, most of this money taken up, applied to that state grant that we had through Johanna Hayes' office? We had
On this-
2 grants we had?
Not on,
I don't think this one.
No, this was, we were going for FEMA money on this, and in the end, FEMA rejected it.
Yeah, exactly. I knew, FEMA. I knew we were trying to do something with ARPA, and then we decided we'll apply it towards the state grant too, and whichever one, if we didn't get the state grant, then the money was gonna come from I think the ARPA or whatever it was.
I believe it's 2 separate subjects. This was a project that, where the road collapsed on Echo Lake Road above Ice House Road.
Yeah.
We had no grant, we had no avenue for a grant for that, but we did consider or hope that we would be covered under a FEMA reimbursement. And after we applied to FEMA, we learned that that section was not eligible for reimbursement. So this is 100%. The majority of the funds have already been appropriated. We are going to be short about the $23,000 or $22,000. And basically, this is an advisement to the subcommittee, and we'll be coming to the council to ask for an appropriation for that additional $22,000 or $23,000 so that the person who did the work, the vendor, can be paid fully.
And the 23,000 will take care of the total bill?
Yes. It's actually $22,775.20.
Yep.
And in the original appropriation, there was, the funding was there, but from what I see is a lot of our construction work, we make it one-year money, operational funds. And a lot of times, these projects are usually on the capital side, like 5 years. Not that you need 5 years, but you'd get it done within the second or third year, and the funding is still available. Well, come July 1st, probably a month or two after that, is all the money goes back into the operational account. But this isn't really like an operational, it's more, construction or repair by replacement, for that. So there's a lot of line items. It looks like we're under the gun to get them done because it's one-year money that's within it.
Okay, that's it.
Sure, go ahead.
This initially came to our attention almost 2 years ago, when a complaint was received at your office. You weren't here at the time, and the complaint was not even addressed. And then it came to the council, and maybe if it was addressed at that time, we wouldn't be in this situation now. And if you're talking diagonal going across Echo Lake Road, is that what it would be, Joe?
That's what the original storm drain was diagonally across the road from the third catch basin up to the manhole in the center of the road.
Would you say, in your opinion, professionally, engineeringly, that we would have to shut down Echo Lake Road?
Yes.
A main east-west?
We would have had to shut down at least one way, so,
I think it went pretty well the way it was.
yes, we were able to keep it open both directions that way.
Through the chair.
Sure.
Could I just ask a question about, was the construction company given the plans, the diagonal?
Yes, as I said, we all missed it. Even the construction company said he just cut straight right along the thing and not even paying attention, and we all missed that same thing. We were just so happy he was finally starting, and we're gonna get it done.
Okay, so they were given the correct plans.
Yes.
They missed it, and then
We also
you and
missed
your crew just missed catching the follow-up.
Yep,
Okay.
that is correct.
So, but you did explain, Joe, that you think that the way that it's connected now works better?
Yes,
Okay,
because again, it's all to one side of the road.
yeah,
It doesn't, we didn't have to cut across the center of the road, which would have inhibited traffic for a longer construction time.
Right.
Second thing is, in the future, if we ever do any work, we're on the gutter, not in the middle of the road.
yeah,
Okay.
sounds good.
Any other questions?
Almost set.
Okay. Thank you.
What do we need to, we don't need to do anything, we're just gonna move it to the town council to appropriate the funds. All right, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
You know what's next year?
Adjournment.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, meeting's over. Thanks, guys.
Thank
Merry
you.
Christmas.
Recording stopped.